In 1985, Daniel Harper walked into family court, young and penniless, his heart set on something most would call insane. Dressed in a pale pink shirt, he stood before a judge and made an audacious request to adopt 3 black baby girls, all dressed in matching pink lace dresses. People said he was out of his mind. Even the woman he loved turned her back on him, unable to understand why he was willing to risk it all. But Daniel's heart couldn't bear the thought of these sisters being torn apart. He knew it was a decision that would shape his entire life, and theirs. Fast forward 4 decades, and the world finally sees the extraordinary outcome of his bold, seemingly reckless choice. 3 women who had not only changed their own lives, but have touched countless others. And a father who refused to let go, no matter the odds. Before we dive into their incredible journey, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Let's begin this remarkable story. The year was 1985. A dimly lit county foster office. The sharp scent of disinfectant hanging in the air and the hum of worn-out fluorescent lights filled the space. Daniel Harper sat there, stiff and uncomfortably aware of his damp pale pink shirt sticking to his back, his clenched jaw betraying the storm brewing inside. Across from him, 3 small figures huddled together on a threadbare couch. 3 black baby girls, barely toddlers, dressed in matching pink lace dresses. Their wide blue eyes darted nervously, taking in every move around them. They were eerily quiet, as if the sound of their voices might be the thing that would tear them apart. The social worker, Sarah Matthews, tapped her pen impatiently against a pile of files, her eyes skeptical. "Mr. Harper, let's be realistic here. You're one man, 24 years old, working night shifts at a hospital laundry. You can't possibly manage 3 children." Daniel's voice cut through the room, low and firm. "They're not 3. They're 1. You split them, you destroy them." Ruth sighed, the weight of her doubts pressing down on her. "We had a couple who were willing to take Maya. The others, they—" "No," Daniel interrupted, his voice rising. He leaned forward, his palms flat on the table, eyes blazing. "Don't even finish that sentence. Look at them." He pointed at the toddlers, their tiny hands interlocked so tightly, their fingers trembling. You try pulling one away, and you'd need an army. They only sleep together. They only stop crying together. This isn't just paperwork. Ruth, this is a bond, something you can't break with a signature. From the corner, Mrs. Grace, the landlady, scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Bond doesn't pay rent, Mr. Harper. You're already behind on payments. And 3 babies crying all night? My walls are paper thin. I'll begin complaints every week." Daniel snapped his head toward her, fury flashing in his eyes. "Then raise my rent. Take another deposit. But don't you dare tell me they don't deserve walls they can share." Ruth pinched the bridge of her nose, her exhaustion clear. "Mr. Harper, listen. You don't have a wife. You don't even own your own home. You've got a fiancé who already called me, telling me this whole thing is too much. Rachel, wasn't it?" Daniel muttered bitterly. "Yeah, she made me choose. Told me she wouldn't marry a man who drags 3 kids home out of pity. And what did you say?" Ruth's voice was soft, but the question landed like a challenge. Daniel's eyes flickered with something raw, something deeper than the bitterness. "I said love isn't pity. And if she can't see that, then she's not the woman I thought she was." The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating, before it was broken by the quiet sound of the toddlers shifting on the couch, their fingers still tightly entwined. Daniel's gaze lingered on them, the bond he refused to let be severed. The weight of the room seemed to hold its breath, and in that moment, Daniel Harper didn't just make a decision. He made a promise. The baby stirred, her eyes locking onto Daniel. Lila, the smallest, stretched her hand toward him, the lace of her pink sleeve slipping down her tiny arm. Daniel's heart clenched. He pushed his chair back and knelt, letting her fingers curl gently into his beard. Maya and Ella followed, wobbling off the couch, until all three girls huddled against him. "They chose me already." Daniel's voice cracked. "I don't need to be blood." The courtroom was suffocating, the air thick with tension. A distant relative appeared, demanding custody of only one child, Maya, arguing she'd have a better chance if separated from the others. The judge's gavel rang out like a thunderclap. "Mr. Harper," Judge Williams said, narrowing his eyes, "on paper, this is reckless. You're young, poor, and alone." Daniel stood, fists clenched at his sides. "On paper, I'm a risk." He shot back, his voice hard. "But at 2 a.m., when they're choking on fevers or when the bottles pile up in the sink, that's when I show up. You can find them another home, but you'll never find them another together." The relative scoffed. "He's not even family." Daniel's glare burned through the room. "Family is who stays." The judge turned to Ruth. "Is this true? That they come only when together?" Ruth hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We've tried." They screamed for hours apart. Together, they fell silent in minutes. The gavel fell with finality. "Temporary custody to Mr. Harper. We'll revisit in 6 months." Daniel didn't breathe until he stepped into the hallway. The decree clutched in his hand. The girls were on his hips and shoulders, their pink dresses brushing against his shirt. He whispered, 6 months is enough. I'll prove a lifetime." But proving it was war. Nights he pushed industrial washers at the hospital, his hands raw from bleach. Days he rocked 3 cribs in rotation, scribbled feeding times on masking tape, and dozed sitting up against the wall. His neighbors banged on ceilings. Mrs. Grace waved late notices. When the laundry truck he bought on credit got rear-ended, he patched it with duct tape and borrowed more. Interest devoured his paychecks, each day feeling like a battle for survival. Then one winter night, the power blew. The apartment was cloaked in darkness, the only sound the soft whimpers of the girls. Daniel wrapped them in blankets, filled thermoses with warm water from the boiler, and whispered lullabies into the still night until dawn. The weight of it all was heavy, but the moment was theirs. A neighbor, suspicious of the quiet, called CPS. At 3 a.m., 2 agents knocked, their boots echoing in the hallway. Inside, they found Daniel shirtless, his pale pink shirt draped over a chair. The girls were asleep on his chest, their blue eyes flickering open as the flashlight swept over the room. One agent glanced at the other, whispering, "They're fine." The case was dismissed, but the damage was done. Daniel's pride had taken the blow. One call, just one, had shaken everything. His world, so carefully built, now felt fragile, like a house of cards waiting to fall. 10 years later, that fragility cracked. Bills piled higher, the truck's engine sputtered its last breath, and creditors began circling. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, a shoe box open before him, the tiny pink lace dresses folded neatly inside. His hands trembled as he pressed the lid shut, whispering to the empty apartment, "I promise to keep you together, but I don't know how much longer I can hold this line." The eviction notice slid under the door like a cold blade. He read it twice, then folded it in half, burying it in the shoe box with the dresses. The girls, now 10, were asleep in the next room. They were old enough to see the signs, the thinning cupboards, his limping steps after double shifts, the constant tension in the air. He couldn't let them see it. Swallowing his pride, Daniel knocked on Mrs. Grace's door. She crossed her arms, eyes sharp. "You're drowning, Harper. Maybe it's time you let the state place them somewhere they can be comfortable." His voice was rough. "Comfortable doesn't raise kids. Commitment does." Mrs. Gray smirked. Then prove it. You're already 3 months behind. Daniel did what he had to do. He worked until his back screamed in protest. He washed linens for hospitals, hotels, and clinics. He fixed the truck's engine himself, his knuckles raw from frozen bolts. And through it all, he carried the girls with him, teaching them to fold sheets into neat rectangles, to sort whites from colors, to keep track of every penny. Survival turned into rhythm. When the 6-month custody review came, it became permanent adoption. Judge Williams leaned forward that day, glancing at the 3 girls, now in matching church dresses Daniel had ironed late into the night. "Mr. Harper," the judge said, his voice softer than usual, "against all odds, you've kept them safe in school and together. That's not reckless. That's remarkable." Daniel simply nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The decree, listing all 3 names under his guardianship, was tucked into the shoe box with the dresses. The line was finally held. The years that followed weren't kind, but Daniel never faltered. The girls grew, and so did the questions. At school, whispers spread, "Why do you look nothing like your dad?" Daniel always responded with quiet strength, because family is built, not copied. When racism snarled its ugly head, at the grocery store and hallways, even from teachers, Daniel stood firm, a shield against it all. He took the blows, then went home and told the girls, "Don't waste your voice on hate. Save it for your dreams." And they listened. Lila, with her steady gaze, was drawn to the hospital where Daniel once worked. She shadowed nurses, fought for a place in training, and by her 30s, she was teaching new NICU staff, sharing the story of how her father had kept them warm with nothing but thermoses and blankets. Maya, sharp-witted and determined, poured herself into law. Long nights in the library, her father's old pink shirt draped around her shoulders for warmth. She later stood in court, arguing for sibling bond protections, using her own adoption as a precedent. She won. Ella, inventive and restless, filled her notebooks with designs, cribs, bottle warmers, her mind always working. Daniel teased her, "Your doodles look like laundry cards." But those sketches turned into Harper Together, a company creating affordable baby gear. Daniel kept working, his hair silver, his hands rough from years of labor. He never remarried. His ex-fiancée, Rachel, crossed his path once at the market, but Daniel just nodded. There was no space for regret. By 2025, Daniel was 64. His back ached from the weight of years spent lifting, but when he saw his daughters, his eyes still lit up. Then, one spring morning, they surprised him. They gathered him on a cream-colored couch, the old, battered shoe box sitting on the coffee table. Maya lifted the lid. Inside were the faded pink lace dresses and the yellow court decree. Daniel's hands trembled. "You kept these all this time?" Ella smiled. "We kept you, Dad. Now it's our turn." They handed him papers, not bills, but deeds. They had bought and restored their first foster home. Its new name gleamed on a brass plaque, the Rose Cottage. It would shelter siblings, ensuring no child would face separation like they almost had. At the ribbon cutting, a crowd gathered. Former case workers, nurses, neighbors, even Sarah Matthews, now with white hair, clapped from the front row. Rachel appeared, older, carrying flowers. Daniel's heart swelled. He had built something lasting, and now his daughters were carrying the torch forward. She stepped toward Daniel, her voice soft but filled with regret. "You were right. I didn't believe in this. In them, but you did. And look at what they've become." Daniel's response was calm, no anger in his words. "You wanted an easier life. I wanted theirs." The sisters moved forward, their blue eyes bright against the flash of cameras. They draped a fresh pale pink shirt over Daniel's shoulders, positioning him between them. just as they had in the first Polaroid years ago. Reporters swarmed, asking their questions, but Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice a whisper meant only for them, still together. Always. If Daniel's courage and the daughter's incredible journey touched you, let us know in the comments. Would you have taken the same risk? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell us, do you want more stories of love, struggle, and promises that seemed impossible to keep?